What's up everybody, it's Garrett from Airsoft here, and we're going to be installing a WRAITH X for AEG on today's episode of What the Tech. Alright, so quick disclaimer before we get started. This is a complex installation video. It's going to require a lot of modifications to the lower receiver as well as the gearbox. The parts we're going to need, other than our normal AEG tools, we're going to need our Dremel tool or some sort of electric cutting tool. You can use an angle grinder, but I prefer using a Dremel. We're going to need our 1/4 wrench. We're going to need a 3/8 drill bit. We're going to need needle no pliers. They're very handy for assorted things. We're going to need some heavy duty shears, our armor's wrench of course, and then I will also be doing some cutting with the hacksaw. So what we're going to need to do is essentially break down the entire gun so that we can access the airline in the Inferno. Now, we're doing this post Inferno install, so you can do it all at once. I would definitely recommend that, but this particular one we're going to have to take the Inferno out again. Alright, so now we've got our gun broken down and our gearbox out. We're going to go ahead and pop the gearbox open so that we can install the WRAITH airline. Alright, we've got our gearbox opened up, so we're going to go ahead and unplug the electronics and use our 1/4 wrench to unfasten your airline. Alright, the next thing we're going to do is modify the lower receiver. We're going to trim this tail down to 3/16 of an inch right off the back here. So we're going to go ahead and use our calipers to measure that. I'm going to be using a Dremel tool with a cutting blade, but you can use an angle grinder or any sort of other cutting tool that might work. Now that we have our tail cut down to 3/16, we're going to get our 3/8 drill bit and drill out the inside here so that we have room for the airline. Alright, we're going to get our modified lower receiver now and go ahead and install our stock. We're going to need to put the castle nut on the stock before we connect it to the lower. We'll thread it about 4 or 5 threads up and leave it as is. Stick the sling plate on and connect the stock and install our hex nut. We're just going to thread this all the way down by hand, and then we can gently tighten it with a wrench or some pliers. You're going to turn your castle nut all the way down. Just tighten it with your armor's wrench. Next, we're going to go ahead and get that airline adapter on your airline. You're going to lube the 2 O-rings on the tip of your fitting. And we're going to connect it to the back of the stock. Just be careful not to pinch those O-rings, kind of turn it, and you're going to screw down your adapter. Alright, now we have the WRAITH X fully installed into the lower receiver with our airline adapter tightened down and our airline in place. We're going to set that aside now and mark where we need to cut the gearbox. We're going to cut it here, across, flush with this window, and then we're going to cut it flush along this line right here. So we're going to do that on both sides of the gearbox. And I will be using a Dremel tool, but you can use an angle grinder or whatever cutter you have at your disposal. Alright, now that we've cut that corner off, we're going to go ahead and take this back corner here off as well. We're going to cut right in front of this screw hole. So I'm going to use this little shoulder right here kind of as a guide. So just go straight down across there. And this is what we're going to be using the hacksaw for. Alright, so now that we've got our gearbox fully modified, we're ready to size the airline. So to do this, you're going to want to get the side of your gearbox that has the board in it. You're going to lay the engine down the way it's going to go, and you're going to get your lower receiver and slide the gearbox half in where it's going to go. And this is something you're just going to want to kind of eyeball. It's not a big deal if it's a little long. You might want to have the line a little long, so I'm going to cut it right about here, in between the edge of the valve housing here and where the barb's going to screw in. Remove your gearbox half, remove your engine, go ahead and take the line back off. We're going to get our Gen 2 fitting, install it into our valve housing, tightening it down. Get your airline and your engine and just kind of push and wiggle that down. You want to get it all the way down onto that fitting like so. And now your engine should be ready to go back in the gearbox. So we're going to go ahead and reinstall that. Alright, now that we've got our engine back installed, we're going to test the fitment, make sure it all fits together. To do this, you're just going to slide the gearbox in the lower, and it can be a little tricky to maneuver, so just be careful, don't pinch your wires or anything. And we're going to go ahead and re-lube your fitting, just to make sure those O-rings are lubricated. We're going to angle it and just gently slide it in there. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers just to kind of wiggle it in. There we are. Then we can screw our threaded adapter down. Alright, now we've got our lower fully assembled with the WRAITH X installed, so we're going to go ahead and QC it before we finish our assembly. So we're just going to install our 12 gram CO2. I'm going to let that pressurize. Listen for leaks. I hear no leaks. So we're going to plug that battery in there and fire it a few times to make sure everything's working properly. So everything seems to be working properly, everything's firing. So we're good to finish up and put the upper on. Alright, and that's it. We have our fully installed WRAITH X for AEG. Feel free to check out the maintenance video linked in the MTW WRAITH X video below. And don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks, we'll see you on the field.